Okay guys, this is the video lecture for Module 1, and I wanted to start by going over some of the objectives that I wanted you to get out of the readings from Chapter 1 and the selections in the PM. First, we want to explain why project management is crucial in today's world. We also want to be able to define a project and differentiate projects from routine operations. Third objective is to establish the importance of projects in implementing organization strategy. Fourth objective is to establish that managing projects is an act of balancing the technical and the socio-cultural sides of the project. Okay, so what is a project? Well, your book defines it as a complex, non-routine, one-time effort limited by time, budget, resources, and performance specifications designed to meet customer needs. The PMBOK defines a project, however, as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. And here's listed some of the major characteristics of the project. It's going to have an established objective. Has a defined lifespan with a beginning and an end, of course. That's the temporary endeavor. Requires across the organizational participation. It involves doing something that's never been done before. And of course, it has specific time, cost, and performance requirements. And the Larson text differentiates projects from routine work by saying that projects have a defined lifespan, a well-defined objective. They typically involve people from several disciplines, a project life cycle, and specific time, cost, and performance requirements, and we'll see some of that reflected here. So the PMBOK, I wanted to introduce you to how the PMBOK lays out the study of project management and the discipline. And it really looks at 10 different knowledge areas, and it puts them across 5 different process groups. And here I'm just listing out all of the 10 knowledge areas, and they're broken down into integration management, scope management, time management, cost, quality, HR, communications, risk management, and stakeholder management. And you'll find this in section 1.3 of the PMBOK. And again, it's meant to introduce you to the 5 process groups. Here you see the 10 knowledge areas, and you should familiarize yourself with the chart that's on page 61 of the PMBOK. And that kind of shows you, it lists all of the processes by both knowledge area and process group. It's table 3.1 in the PMBOK. This is a picture of it. Obviously, I don't expect you to read it here. I would like you to look at it in the book. But again, across the top, you'll find the process groups, and down the side, you will find the knowledge areas. And in the squares in the matrix are the actual processes themselves. And we'll be studying these throughout the course of the semester. But this kind of gives you an overview of how PMBOK lays it out and how they approach the study of the discipline. So a program versus a project. Program is defined as a series of coordinated, related, multiple projects that continue over an extended time and are intended to achieve a goal. It's basically a higher level group of projects targeted at a common goal. So if you look at some examples, I think in the book it might have an example of a project might be taking a specific course, whereas the program would be taking a whole bunch of courses to complete. So I put that in there. Kind of give you a little bit of more examples here. Looking at routine, repetitive work, and what a project might be. So the routine work is taking the class notes. The project would be writing a term paper. So I want you to kind of really get a good feel for the difference between what routine work is and what a project is. And using those definitions that we talked about earlier on in this video lecture, you will see the definitions of projects really start to come through when you look at these different examples. So here's a picture from the text. And this is the project life cycle, and I just wanted to briefly talk about this. On the y-axis here, you have the level of effort, and on the x-axis, you have the time from the start of the project to the end of the project. And really, they're looking at different functions of the project and defining the project. You can see the level of effort here is going to be relatively lower than, say, planning or executing. But it's also going to be very short in time at the very beginning of the project. On the other end of the spectrum, the closing basically is the same shape, but a little bit backwards. And the level of effort is again relatively low in comparison to executing and planning, and the time frame is also very short. When you look at planning and executing, you can see that executing takes the most amount of effort, and executing actually goes through the entire project. So from beginning to end. So it takes the entire length of the project and requires the most effort. And then planning, of course, is going to be the second amount of effort, second most amount of effort, greatest amount of effort, and also, it's about 3/4 or a little bit even more of the project lifecycle. So it's important to note that planning doesn't just occur at the beginning, but continues through almost the entire project. Executing does continue from the beginning to the end of the project. Okay, and so I wanted to just kind of talk about that briefly so you can kind of get an idea of what the project lifecycle is. Again, looking at the same thing but a little bit differently, this is the process group flow. And we just talked about the PM box, different knowledge areas and process groups. Well, this is breaking that flow into process groups rather than those four. If we look at the previous slide, the project lifecycle, we've got 4 different functions. Here, we're looking at it by process group. So the initiating process group, again, important to notice the level of process interaction here on the y-axis and the time. Very short duration of time, okay? And then you're looking at the closing process group. This shows the closing process group actually starts way back here. And the reason that is, you'll find out later in the further on in the course, the closing process group actually has some closing of phases in it. Okay, so that's going to start earlier in the scheme of the time of the project duration. When you're closing specific phases, not necessarily closing the project. The planning, again, planning is going to take almost the entire amount of project. The executing process group is going to start and almost take the entire duration of the project. And then the monitoring and controlling. And you can see, again, planning and executing are going to be very high in terms of the level of interactions. Monitoring and controlling is going to be the third most, and then closing and initiating are going to be 2 least. So I wanted to kind of just show that to you in another different way. This is also available to you in the PM doc. It's on page 51. So feel free to take a look at that. And then this is a similar one I wanted to just throw in there as well, and this is from the PM doc. This is on page 39, section 2.4.1. And this really talks about, you've got time again on the x-axis. Here you've got cost and staffing level on the y-axis. And this really shows you the cost of the project and the staffing levels across the project life cycle. So again, we're still thinking of the project life cycle, but just different ways to look at the amount of effort, the amount of dollars, the amount of time that things take. So starting the project, obviously, to organizing, preparing, carrying out the work here, you're going to see that the costs and the staffing level go way up compared to developing a project charter and planning and organizing. And then as you get towards the end and you're closing the project, not necessarily closing phases, but closing the project, the level of effort goes way down, because this is going to be where you have the bulk of your team members actually doing the work and executing and monitoring the project. On the other ends, you're going to have quite a bit fewer people, and fewer amount of time from the people that you do have involved in so they won't be spending the bulk of their time on that. So I just wanted to kind of show you those different types of ideas about the project life cycle and how the funds are going to be used throughout the course of a project and how the level of effort will be. You've got the project manager. The project manager manages temporary, non-repetitive activities, okay, and frequently acts independently of the formal organization. So really, they're marshaling resources for the project. They're the direct link to the customer. They're providing the direction, the coordination, and integration to the project team. And finally, the project manager is ultimately responsible for the performance and the success of the project. If you look to the PMBOK in section 1.7.1, it describes the responsibilities and competencies of a successful project manager. It includes, some of these things would include knowledge about project management, of course, their capability to perform, and their personal effectiveness. So, and then, of course, that speaks to inducing the right people at the right time to address the right issues and make the right decision. Some definitions I just wanted to throw in I thought would be good. Project, again, according to the PMBOK, is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Project management, then, is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. Okay, project manager is the person assigned by the performing organization to achieve the project objectives. So some of the current drivers of project management, and your text talks about this, some of the factors that have led to increased use of project management across many different industries. And there's been some environmental forces that have changed the way that we manage projects. And these they're not limited to, but I'll give you a few examples. The product life cycle, knowledge growth, increased competition and reduced time to market due to increasing global markets and technology advancements, organizational downsizing, outsourcing. So all these things, all of these forces impact what we're seeing as an increased use of project management across industries. Sustainability is a big thing, and you look at the triple bottom line here: planet, people, profit. If you look back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, corporations were focused solely on profit. That's become slowly changing so that their profit still is, the bottom line, but now it becomes more people, and then it's about their customers too, and sustainability of the planet and all that. So it's important to understand how some of those external forces have led to an increased use for project management within organizations. The project governance, your book talks about this a little bit, and you can also review this in section 1.5.2 in the PMBOK. Here we say that projects are organizational investments, right? They're going to require time, money, and other resources, right? So governance is most frequently used to balance an organization's resources and their risk over all of their organizational resources. So project management is used to enforce priorities within the organization. It's used to ensure that projects align with organizational strategies more and more and organizational goals. And in today's fast-paced world, that can change really quickly and impact a project that's ongoing. So governance signals to the project manager that decisions at a higher level in the organization can impact an individual project. And what you'll see is, especially if you have a project management office that monitors all projects, all ongoing projects and potential projects, you might get to a point where you have a review of your project, or there's a yearly review, annual review. These are sometimes called go, no-go decisions or gating as mentioned in the text here. And they're going to have a review during the project execution or implementation to assess the current performance of the project and look at it and see if they are still in alignment with the organizational priorities and goals, organizational strategies, and decide if they're going to either continue the project, put the project on hold, revise the direction of the project, or just stop it altogether. That happens quite a bit, and this is part of the project governance. And again, organizations are going to expect some type of value in return for their investment. Lastly, organizational resources are limited. So organizations need to choose between the competing interests on specific projects. And again, this decision is based on the value that a competing project will provide to an organization relative to the other ones that they're looking at. And yeah, so we'll talk more about that next module. Integration of a project, or really the centralization, by putting all of these under the purview of a project management office, it provides senior management with a big picture of how they're using all of their organizational resources, spreading that risk over the entire organization. And then it gives you, a rough measure of the firm's improvement in managing projects. And so it allows senior management to become more involved in decision making and really see the whole portfolio rather than just looking at a single project. The outcomes of the project that then affects the portfolio and should be aligned with the organizational strategy. And then you come down from the organizational strategy to make sure that your portfolio is well balanced. And part of that balance means that it's going to affect the decisions for individual projects. So, which situations worse? You build something that doesn't give any measured organizational value, or you fail to implement a system that could have provided value, but it was underdeveloped. So that's the question, right? And when you think about that a little bit, this really gets to the heart of aligning projects with organizational strategy, right? Some of the problems that result from an uncoordinated project management system would include, projects that don't support the organization's strategic plan and goals, independent decisions that create internal imbalances, conflicts, confusion, and that result in dissatisfied customers, whether those are internal or external. And your failure to prioritize projects results in a waste of resources, so non-value add, right? And that's what we were just kind of getting at with that last couple slides. Strategic plans are implemented primarily through projects. So, for example, a new product, new information system. So you can look at this in reverse too, and this is noted in the PMBOK on section 1.4.3. Many projects are implemented due to strategic considerations, right? Like there could be a change in market demand, for example, or maybe there's a new business opportunity, or there's a new environmental regulation that's causing firms to change the way that they operate. Or maybe your organization has a new patent or IP, intellectual property, that your organization might own. And so they've got some sort of competitive advantage, right? Well, these are what's called the business case for a project, right? And we'll be talking more about this, but this is reiterated in section 4.1.1.2 of the PMBOK. And basically, the business case includes some sort of a cost-benefit analysis for the project and describes how the project's going to help the organization meet one or more of its organizational objectives. And that's what's going to be presented to senior management when they decide whether or not to move forward. And we'll cover this in more depth in the next module as well. And if the project is not linked to the strategic plan, either internally or to the external customers organization, the resources devoted to the project are basically wasted. Okay, so that's important to understand. And this lack of connectivity between projects and organizational strategies, it occurs more in practice than you would imagine. So the book also talks a little bit about portfolio management and the science and art of project management. Right? You oversee the project selection. We've talked a little bit about this stuff. You monitor aggregate resource levels and skills. You encourage the use of best practices. You're able to balance projects in the portfolio to represent a certain level of risk that the organization is willing to accept. You're able to improve communication and create a total organizational perspective. Right? And it's really important. There's some really good discussion about the relationships among portfolios, programs, projects, and that is in the PMBOK, section 1.2 and 1.4, so be sure to check that out. And then this is one last idea that I wanted to introduce you to, and that's the idea of the triple constraint. This is not in your book yet, at least, but it's something that's we're going to see over and over again, and they've actually added to this, and we'll get to that later in the course, but it starts off with you've got scope, you've got budget, you've got schedule. Well, you can increase your scope, but one of these other two constraints is going to have to give, whether it's the schedule, increase your schedule, or budget's going to either increase or decrease. Likewise, the schedule, if you want to shorten your schedule, well, that means either the budget's going to have to increase or the scope's going to have to decrease. So the idea here is that they're always going to be at some sort of balance. And in order to do one thing to one of these constraints, it's going to have to be affected by one of the other two, or both. So that's the end of the video lecture for this module. And if you have general questions, please post them to the discussion board forum. Of course, questions and discussion. And these would be questions that I can answer that would benefit the entire class. Again, if you have individual questions, please contact me. And good luck with your reading, and I hope you all enjoy this module.